So I often say that it's very easy to come up with ideas, but it takes a lot more time to execute those ideas. And in a world of finite resources, you've really got to be selective. I think someone said genius is 99% perspiration and only 1% innovation.
Darren, thank you so much for inviting us to your office here in central London in Nova Victoria. We're inside, this is the immersive room?
This is our immersive room, Owen, yeah. So this is where we work with clients to bring to life their construction project. And we can show geospatially the progress that's being made, some of the design options that they need to consider, but also we can show progress and also any project issues or any safety issues that may be at risk or may have happened, and how we want to adapt the project to avoid those sorts of problems in the future.
Very good. So today we're going to sit with you for 1 to 1.5 hours or so to discuss innovation at Atkins Realis. We'll go through an introduction and your background as Chief Digital Officer, how you cultivate innovation at Atkins Realis, the technology that you guys are using, and how people should build better technology for the industry. And then, of course, we'll go into the future of the industry and technology in AEC.
Sounds good.
Darren, I guess over to you. So can you give us an overview of Atkins Realis and your role as Chief Digital Officer?
Yeah, sure. So, look, Atkins Realis' mission is to engineer a better future for our planet and its people. I'm really privileged to be able to do that. And one of the ways that we think about doing that is by connecting people with data and technology. So innovation's really at the center of our approach. The AEC industry has been known to be quite slow in adopting certain technologies and innovation compared to other markets. And this is really our time now to use innovation to rethink some of the challenges that are facing the planet and accelerate that as much as possible with our own people. We have 38,000 brilliant minds in the organization, so harnessing that potential is really at the heart of what me and my team do, but also bringing in more outside-in thinking. I think in the past, because we are an engineering organization and culturally other AECs take pride in inventing things and creating things, there have been some really good technical advances in other industries, adjacencies around digital twin in manufacturing, aerospace and defense, for example. And there's lots of lessons and adoption that we're fast-tracking into Atkins Realis to drive value for our clients.
Hey, Darren, so tell us, who is a typical client for Atkins Realis, and how do you differ from competition?
So we're very interested in, how to stay relevant and help those clients in their transformation journeys. How do we execute these really important large assets that they want to design, build, retrofit, sustain, prolong? And particularly with the energy transition and the race to net zero, there's a need to do that in an even faster way with the planet heating and the challenges that we're seeing at a geopolitical level. The drive around AI is really important at the moment. So some of our key clients are nuclear clients, but also consumers of energy. So the AI revolution is driving real interest in some of the things that we do. As a company, we specialize in engineering services and construction, but we're also one of the 6 nuclear technology owners on the planet. So there are 6 companies that are providing gigawatt technologies. Our CANDO technology is one of those 6. So we're in a unique position to combine our nuclear heritage, both in SMR and in traditional nuclear power provision, with our engineering construction capability.
So you mentioned nuclear. Who are some of the other clients that you guys work with? Is it like large real estate owners or?
So on nuclear, there will be a range of customers that will buy our CANDO energy provision, but we also support other energy companies with their own technologies and competing technologies. So we both have the ability to design our own engineering capability and execute that, but also help the competition. So we're quite unusual with that. There's quite a wide range of them, but we're also embedded into some of the SMR consortiums as well.
What's SMR?
So small modular reactors.
Oh.
So AI data centers, the power that's needed to drive some of the new AI provision in data centers is about 3 to 5 times more power than there was needed on a traditional data center. And that's taking more demand from the grid. And that means that in some cases, traditional energy provision, ideally renewable and sustainable energy provision like nuclear, like wind, like solar, is hopefully going to drive most of that new energy consumption that's needed to drive AI. So we're quite uniquely positioned in that space to support both traditional energy provision, which we think will be the way forward. AI data centers are going to need more and more energy, and they're likely to need gigawatt provision, and SMRs are normally about 300 to 500 megawatt type provision. So at the moment, people are thinking about how does an SMR feed a new AI data center ecosystem, but we believe over time the traditional combination of traditional nuclear and small modular reactors will be part of that ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. So nuclear industry has been considered very risky in general. Reactors, or is it?
I think the risk equation is being recalibrated at the moment by evaluating that against the risk of traditional energy provision from carbon fuels, right? So carbon risk to the climate is high, but also geopolitical control of certain resources has come to the front with the provision of oil and gas from Russia, and that was being channeled through Ukraine at one point, and that's, it had to help Europe in particular think about how it delivers its own energy needs and how it controls those energy needs. So the risk of or fear of a nuclear incident, certainly there are more controls and measures. It's a highly regulated industry, but the appetite for having sovereign control of one's sustainable energy provision is really increasing in some countries. And the reliance on traditional oil and gas provisions from geopolitically challenging locations is now becoming a bigger consideration.
We've certainly seen some modular nuclear reactors being built out of the US. But
that's the small modular reactor capability, the SMRs, So there are some of the large companies like Google and Microsoft are going into energy contract provisions with, say, the equivalent of an EDF or a Dominion Power in the US, and making certain deals around how they're going to power their next wave of AI investments. And we've seen just recently the announcements from Trump and others around putting together a $500 billion entity that will power the next evolution of AI capability. And nations are starting to see that as a real sovereign differentiator. And so they're investing not only in the chip technology, but they're really investing in the infrastructure that's needed to power that revolution and differentiation between different economies.
So how far are we, you think, from SMRs being deployed around us?
So SMR as a concept is fairly mature. So nuclear submarines effectively have independent SMR capabilities. The adaptation of that is to look at it on a land-based concept in a production environment to get to scale at lower cost. The licensing around that and the design of those capabilities is really mature. What we're starting to see is some countries are now commissioning the construction of those SMR capabilities. And so those lead times can be anything between 2 to 6 years, depending on where they are in their maturity life cycle. But it's here as a technology, it's real. It's been proven and scaled and licensed, and now it's being implemented. So I think you're going to see more SMR capability being introduced into nuclear-friendly countries. Poland have made a big order recently. We're seeing provision in the US come through, and in Europe also. And the UK, there are consortiums, including the Rolls-Royce consortium, that are really well progressed in that area.
So we go back to the role of the Chief Digital Officer. So what does your day-to-day look like, Darren? I know when we spoke last time, you traveled into a few different continents around the world.
Yeah, look it's honestly, it's an honour and a privilege to have the job. So we're an organisation spread across 5 regions, and so that means that my responsibility spread from, say, Canada to the US and South America. The UK and Ireland is a big growth area for us. We have the Middle East. And then we have a fantastic global technology centre, which is our delivery hub in India. I spent a lot of time in India. And so we've got some fantastic digital capabilities in India, and we're expanding that there. And then our other focus areas beyond that involve Australia, and also Asia, with a focus on Hong Kong. So it's quite a big paper round.
Which region do you think is most booming in new tech?
Which is most booming in new tech? Great question. Look, I think the agenda around innovation from the US that we're seeing with Elon Musk and other technology leaders, from Amazon, Oracle, others coming into the play, and Trump's sponsorship, I think we're going to see good progress in the US. We know that the Middle East want to stand out as the most advanced country and culture going forward. They've skipped the analog phase and they've gone to hyper digital, and they're in negotiations with creating their own multi-billion-dollar AI hubs and capability there. So that involves energy provision, both sustainable, traditional, and in some cases nuclear, but also the designing of new cities and superstructures.
So are you typically like meeting the people and like driving the initiative of Atkins Realis from a digital perspective when you go into these places? Like what's the sort of like trip
day-to-day
agenda?
The objective. So there'll be some C-suite relationships that I will help sponsor. So in some cases where we've got really advanced clients, I'll be working with the chief future officer or the chief innovation officer, the CTOs of some very large clients, really understanding what they're trying to achieve. And so one of our clients wants to digitally enable the entire retail real estate experience, where, if you like, when you go into a Tesla shop, it's more of like an Apple store. You walk in, you start to choose the leather, the look of a vehicle, and it's more of a retail experience. They're interested in selling a brand and a product, like a retail configuration, through to a client, and then keeping that sort of digital experience going all the way through. So they're really looking at modernizing that. And the AEC industry has an opportunity to lean into that and support that transformation.
How much of your work is focused on construction technology and versus real estate technology? Like you just explained the experience of your client. This is more like real estate once it's built, right?
Yeah, look, I think as a company, a lot of our focus is on engineering services. So it's the high-level design and the design, and then the construction interface and construction monitoring, where a lot of our expertise and focus is. We still have really significant construction projects where we design, build, and operate, in some cases turnkey capabilities. And so we need technology in all of those, but I'd say the bulk of our focus is on engineering services and the technology that enables that for our clients, and our nuclear capability.
Okay, without getting too personal, Darren, how do you earn your yearly bonus?
Yeah, look, I saw this question and it did make me laugh. I earn my yearly bonus through my team, effectively. I'm really transparent about what my objectives are. So my objectives, I agree those with my boss, the Chief Operating Officer for Atkins Realis, Philip Hoare, and they're aligned with the objectives of our executive committee. So I make sure that what I do, I typically choose around 5 to 6 objectives and make sure they're really clear at the beginning of the year, and I set SMART objectives. So specific, measurable, I think it's accurate, realistic, and timed. So I'm really clear on what we're going to do. And I use that at the beginning of my monthly meetings. So every meeting that I have on a monthly basis with the exec, with the chief operating officer, we're really clear on those objectives and how we're progressing month by month against them. But then I empower my team and assign members of my team from across the globe to own discrete elements of my objectives. And my job is to make sure that they're successful, so that when they're successful, then I'm successful and I get my bonus, right? But it's really about having a cascaded approach and real transparency. And I'll be clear when some of my objectives are not being met as well. So it's not a surprise to people that are more accountable for that below me, that that's an area that we're really going to need to focus on to get right. Does that answer your question?
I just wanted to have follow up on this. So how do you figure out which objectives are relevant?
This really goes back to our operating model. So we've implemented a digital operating model. And when I first joined, as I say, there were 38,000 brilliant minds, all contributing to what we could do at a digital level. And it was quite hard to filter out some of the noise and focus on the priorities that were going to change the dial for the company. So I was really keen to first understand, as a business, how did we view different regions? How do we view different markets? How do we view different clients? Where could we invest our precious investment dollars to have the biggest return? And we've looked at the regions and the markets that we're in those regions where we want to achieve a higher margin. And in that case, either we're already achieving a high margin and we want to double down on that and make sure we maximize our opportunity through digital innovation and efficiency. Or in some cases, we've got markets where we're nearly at our threshold, where we want double-digit performance, and some level of digital enhancement or enablement would allow us to do that. So that allowed me and my team to see at a macro level which parts of our business weren't necessarily the noisiest in terms of their digital requests, but they were the ones that we could enhance and enable the best. And that allows us to be really transparent. And so from there, that sets the focus areas. And then from there, we then look for buy-in at a regional level. So each of our regions is run by a president. And within their team, their senior leadership team, I have a regional digital lead that reports to the president and also reports to me. So we have really close alignment between our 5 regions and what they need to be successful with their regional strategy as a business, and how can the digital strategic plan execute and support them.
Mm-hmm. Would you just give us like a 30,000 feet point of view on the volume of construction that you're seeing? Where you see the most construction happening, based on your regions? Yeah,
look, at that high level, one has to acknowledge that the Middle East is just seeing phenomenal growth and pace and ambition in the complexity and scale of the construction objectives that they have there. And as you know, we're very lucky to have earned the right to design some of the most sophisticated megastructures in that region. So that would be a standout for us in terms of just the pace of growth in that region. And so we are seeing huge opportunity in the US, where as a company, we're one of the largest architecture, engineering, construction companies in the world. But we feel there's still more opportunity for us to grow in the US, and we've recently made partnerships and acquisitions in that area.
Okay, Darren, so can you give us a broad interview of how AtkinsRealis implements innovation? There's 30,000 employees.
Yeah, it's probably about 40,000 now.
Since we started this interview.
Yeah, there's probably a few more joined. Yeah. Look, we wanted to really harness the ideation process, but align it to significant challenges that were relevant for the region. So I often say, that it's very easy to come up with ideas, but it takes a lot more time to execute those ideas. And in a world of finite resources, you've really got to be selective. I think someone said that genius is 99% perspiration and only 1% innovation. So it's just kind of getting the idea and then converting that to value is really where the effort is. So we've got to be selective. So we've introduced an ideas hub where any one of our 40,000 people can create an idea and put that in. But what we're really interested in is putting out particular challenges, industry challenges, market challenges, specific client challenges, and then crowdsourcing a response from our people to that. So we already know then that we're harnessing our creative minds to a particular problem that we know that will add value to our clients and we can monetize. We then allow our people to vote on that and create momentum and buy-in around that. Once we get to that stage, there's a selection process that comes through from the regional digital leads that work with me to represent the priorities. So it still might be a fantastic idea, but it may not underpin something that we're really trying to do. So for example, virtual site access and construction monitoring is a big push for us in our Middle East regions and our North America region. So any idea and innovation that relates to that and makes that even better and builds on top of that momentum and investment that we're already putting in, attracts more attention and sponsorship by my extended senior leadership team, then a really, really brilliant idea, but it might take us 10 years to incubate that and find the market for it. We then set a new threshold, which is we typically have way more fantastic ideas and propositions than we have the bandwidth and resources to fund. And arguably, we could get more money, we could seek more investment. My role is just over a year in now, so it's about 14 months in. We're starting to build a solid track record of demonstrable results. And part of that was applying a discipline around proof of value and accuracy. So we moved away from the word pilot. And when I came here, some of the pilots were like indefinite pilots. They've been going for a number of years. They were so good that no one wanted to stop them, but we couldn't necessarily put our finger on the value that they were bringing. And so we had to ask ourselves some hard questions around, where were we really getting the best returns and where did we want to double down? So last year, there was a little bit of a reset around our focus. We've capitalized on those investments, and now that's opened up the opportunity for us to build on that and secure more funding. But typically, we ask the question of, no matter how exciting the idea sounds, could we achieve a 4x plus return?
On the capital invested?
On the capital invested. So there's a CapEx and OpEx because we've got some people costs that are associated with it, but the sum that we invest, we typically look to, let's say we invest $1 million, we'll like to get to an annualized return of a $4 million benefit to the business, and we like to close that out within a 12 to 18 month period. So if you took that proposition and looked at your short share portfolio, I've done quite well with some of my shares, but I'm nowhere near that type of return. So the potential for us to be really selective, but back the right ideas and be clear about when we expect the value to be achieved, and then not scale until we've achieved that. That's been a discipline that we've really focused on in the last 12 months, and now we're starting to capitalize and make scaling decisions on those investments.
So what are the key components of good decision making when trying to hit this return on the technology? Like, what are the key components?
So the first thing is does everybody buy into it? Are these real figures? Do we have alignment with the regional digital lead, who is often, in some cases, they'll be our chief operating officer working within one of the regions. So they're already a senior member of the leadership team in a region, and those regions are typically $1.5 to $2 billion businesses in their own right. So do they agree that the opportunity is there? But I guess the way I liken this at the moment is, if you think about a paper round and people are walking around delivering papers, typically by the time the morning's done, someone can only do one paper round. Our job is to bring an electric bike into that paradigm and disrupt it. And the question is well, how many more paper rounds can be done with this electric bike? And some people are going to be looking at the bike and think, this is fantastic. I can do 5 paper rounds. I'm going to sign up to 5 paper rounds. Other people are going to say, I don't believe this bike will work. I've never ridden a bike. I don't know how to ride the bike. I don't believe in electric bikes. I'm only going to deliver 1 paper round. So our job is really to deliver the best bike that can enable, say, 5 paper rounds. So it's a 5x return. But where we want to get to is there's going to be a different appetite for risk and a different appetite for what we would call a margin improvement. So if you've got 1 person and 1 bike, you've got to pay for the bike, you've got to pay for the person, you could potentially do 5 paper rounds. You've got 5 times more revenue. But there's a challenge in our industry as to, do enough people know how to ride the bike? Do they trust the bike? What will they sign up to? And how much of that opportunity of 5 times is on the table? And I think as an industry, we're trying to work that through. People like me that are used to designing these bikes and riding these bikes, I probably achieve a 5x. But can everybody that we want to deploy it to achieve the 5x? No. So we need to be really clear with each region, what's the contribution? Are they going to lock in on that, on their margin? And therefore, as long as we're comfortable and understand that that is a transaction that people can buy into, as long as the bike works, then we want to train and enable people to get as much of that commitment that they've signed up to. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
a great
Sorry
analogy.
to speak as an analogy there.
No, I love
analogies
it.
are brilliant.
Yeah. It's helpful for my simple mind. So
Yes,
thank
same
you for
here,
that.
Same here.
No worries. I try to keep it simple, otherwise it is too complex.
Agreed. What would you say, and can you share perhaps some detail on the innovations and investments that you have made that have been most or resulted in most ROI or perhaps profit?
As a core business, we design major assets for clients, and we construct and oversee the construction of major assets. So for a long time, our innovation focus has been in ensuring we've got world-class capabilities in those areas. And the contribution that we're seeing that we're able to measure is increased win rates, reduction in losses, increased schedule, increased and better outcomes for a client, and increased profitability. So we're really clear on those measures, and we're able to see a return against those. And those are the areas that we've doubled down on. But of late, we've also really wanted to harness the opportunity around AI. And we ran 3 tranches of AI projects. So 4 projects, proof of value and accuracy projects within each tranche. And we started to see the potential of between 4x as a minimum up to around 20x with those returns. And for us, it's really important that we focus on the accuracy element. So we can see the value, but with generative AI and the potential for over trusting that technology and not embedding people in the process to validate it, means that we really need to make sure that we have accuracy as well as value. And so we're being really thoughtful about how we scale those out and work them through. If you like, our AI program, as a core one, as a global rollout, we've looked at generative chat capabilities. So Copilot, we're a Microsoft first organization, so we try to solve a lot of our problems with the Microsoft stack first. And so our use of Copilot and rolling that out, we've seen significant productivity gains, and now we're making a scaling decision to roll that out across more of our organization. And so this year we're now in production and we're seeing that rolled out. So we released something called Microsoft Edge, which is like a ChatGPT interface into the browser, and that went out to all of our people, so around 40,000 people.
Is this for internal?
This is for internal.
Information, knowledge management?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Okay. But we've got Copilot for Office 365 as a rollout, And we've piloted that, and we've seen significant returns around that, around a 4 to 12x type return on that investment. And so we've made commitments to roll that out in production across our organization. And we work with each region to get that. So our biggest pull-through is in our nuclear business. So we are seeing huge growth in our nuclear business, and recruitment is really important for us to continue to meet the one work and the demand that we already have. And anything that enhances the productivity of our people and gets more value from the people we already have and the new people we're bringing in is an important lever for us to pull. So we're really on that one. And then at a broader level, we zeroed in on quite a significant opportunity around winning work and how we put proposals together, and making sure that our talented win work professionals are not bogged down with the basics of pulling the proposal together, but they're really adding value. And so we've used some Microsoft Copilot technologies on that, but we've also brought in a specialist piece of technology that helps us do that. And we're seeing double-digit million type efficiencies in the way we can now execute high-quality bid proposals and then personalize them for specific jobs that we really want to win. So we can go for more larger jobs because we've created more capacity to build up to a minimal standard response and then add the value on top. So that's been a really important lever for us to pull. We've looked at our corporate services and really thought about how do we embed the technology that might be already available within, say, Workday for HR or other embedded COTS, commercial off-the-shelf technologies, and enhance that in our corporate service experience. So we've made some pretty good progress in those areas, as most companies are. But where we're really pivoting now is looking at generative AI capabilities in how we design and monitor construction. So those are where we've spent quite a lot of time with specific vendors, some of the vendors that you might have interviewed, and CEOs, in our mutual networks, but really putting them to test now around specific mega scale projects and seeing how we can enhance our offer with that generative capability in a way that ensures accuracy for the client, but also drives value and speed of certainty for the project completion for the client and value for us as a company.
From the monitoring perspective, would this be like reality capture and progress tracking on site as kind of technology?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so from the there's a lot of man marking that goes on between the construction supervision role and then the constructor. And so, that's important because the client needs to know when value has been earned and whether the quality of the build is as designed. And so it's important that we do that, and it's a really important part of our revenue streams. But now there are technologies that can enhance that and make that even better. So from reality capture, how do you take temporal pictures of a vastly complex construction site? How do you do that in a safe way? How do you monitor the as-designed build with the as-built construction? Are there any problems with the construction? How do we spot that the second it happens, not 4 weeks later when there's lots of retrograde investment that's got to be made to correct? And that turns into a long, litigious argy-bargy back with the construction and the architects and so on. So trying to neutralize that as quickly as possible to get people reset and driving the project schedule the way it was intended is really important. But rooms like this allow us also, sometimes even the best laid plans of mice and men, don't last that long. This room that your viewers are seeing, we have recreated these immersive rooms all over the world for the way we execute with our clients. So we can bring clients into this space, and we may have identified a challenge with either labor provision, weather impacts, cost of materials, geospatial issues that weren't quite well understood, or some other sort of unpredicted issue, we can visualize this problem, but also simulate remediations with the client and help them take ownership for different compromise decisions that will allow them to achieve the value of the asset that they're putting in. Most assets are costing tens of millions, if not billions. They're there to do a job. And the construction process is the necessary evil to allow that asset to become productive. If it's a production line, petrochemical plant, semiconductor, power plant, people don't really want to over-index the construction process. They want it to be commissioned and make money for them. That's why they're putting the capital into it, right? So how do you streamline that process? How do you innovate and de-risk that activity? So eventually, if someone's building a stadium, how do they get customers into the stadium, watching concerts and paying for tickets? That's really the output that they're looking for. And our job is to enhance the commissioning of that asset into a margin improvement, productive situation as quickly as possible in the safest possible way. So using technology allows us to do that in a different way.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to go back for a second to implementation of technology. You mentioned Microsoft Edge example. So that's Microsoft, it's a behemoth, a large company, right?
Yes.
How do you view implementation of startup technology into Atkins Realis? And yeah, maybe I can get some thoughts.
Yeah,
on this.
look, this is a great question for your viewers.
Again, we will be here for hours on this one.
Yeah, look, it's one of the first questions I ask a leadership team, particularly the owner, when I talk to them about their great project and how disruptive it is I need to know where they really are on their funding cycle and what their exit strategy is. So, some of our major construction technology companies are companies like Autodesk and Bentley and others, and they are in acquisition mode all the time. So if I spend a lot of time with a startup that is eventually going to be acquired by a company, if they're acquired by a company that we're already heavily partnered with and is part of our ecosystem, then that's great because, all right, I may have gained some early adoption advantage from using that technology, but eventually it'll be consumed into the licenses that we pay to the major construction company. But at the same time, if we invest a lot of time and money in a company that's then acquired by a construction tech leader that we're not heavily exposed with, we don't work with, then that technology goes.
Yes.
So there's a trade-off between how quickly are the construction technology companies evolving and adapting, how much value can we achieve with a Series B, C, D level funded disruptive technology, and then where is their exit path and how does that align with our more mature partner ecosystem. So we're definitely interested in disruption. We're definitely interested in, and we research and have an active research program around each of our core capabilities. We've identified the top 3 disruptive players in each of them. And in some cases, we are bringing them into our proof of value and accuracy focus, and we're deploying those technologies alongside the traditional technologies that we already have. And at some stage, they may merge and morph, but in other cases, I'm always mindful of what happened with the cloud transformation. And companies like Oracle and SAP were some of the last companies to transition from client server and licenses to cloud because they had a monopoly and they didn't need to do it. And they've still maintained a large part of that monopoly. But in that lag that they took to transition to the cloud as cloud provision, new companies like Workday, ServiceNow, Salesforce came up, and they're unicorns in their own right? They're multi-billion-dollar powerhouses in their own right. So, we're constantly thinking about where's the next disruptive billion-dollar organization that's going to come and compete with those existing construction companies like the Avivas, the Hexagons, the Trimbors, the Autodesks, and the Bentleys. So we have close strategic alignment with some of these construction tech companies, but also a stable of innovators. what I would say is that, I think you've interviewed David Rockhill from McKinsey, an ex-colleague of mine from my time as a CTO there with McKinsey, and they have a Meet the Disruptor program where they have a stable of CEOs that they work with and their leadership teams, and they're introducing some of the disruptive capabilities into their client base. And I've kept that agenda and a lot of those relationships from my time there with bringing that capability into Atkins Realis as well.
So apart from the stage of where the startup is right now and the exit strategy and funding journey, what are other features of a startup that you're looking at before?
That we're looking at, yeah. Look, I think there's always a trade-off with a startup because we, as a global architecture, engineering, construction company, are probably going to be one of their biggest clients. So we're going to get their attention in a way that we might not with a much more mature, multi-billion-dollar construction tech company. And I think later on we're going to talk a little bit about my role with Autodesk and as an example. Being relevant and having their attention and focus is really appealing. Having the ability to harness their innovative IP and drive value for our clients rather than have to recreate that in our business is also really appealing. So there's an early mover interest in how we do that. But then naturally what starts to happen is there are scaling issues. So we are a big organization, and if we choose a technology, success for that startup might be rolling out to 10 projects, and we're thinking more about 500 projects. So what does their geographic footprint look like? How do we support them? Where does their funding come and go? Where's the risk in their cash flow? When might they fold? When might they not receive their next series funding, right? So there are a lot of unknowns there that frankly, can be a distraction. So we're not hyper focused on that early seed funding phase, pre-seed, Series A, not so interested in that. But certainly, we would like to track, if I keep it to the corporate services transformation that happened with cloud, we'd like to track the new Workday, we'd like to track the new ServiceNow, we'd like to track the next Salesforce, and which of those companies are likely to play out, but also the acquisitive nature of some of the big players already in the space may mean that before they become a Workday, they may sell out. And they might sell out to a company that we already are hugely partner with, or they might sell out to a company that we have less relationship with. So then we can still preserve that by extending that relationship, but it may not align with the way we're currently geared up. So you gotta make sure you're not stuck with your existing supply base unless they are innovating at a really fast pace, and some are. So you've got to have a balanced portfolio.
I can see a risk actually being a market leader, and I'm not saying that you are not willing to adopt new technologies and startups, but because of being large and how these all the mechanics work, it might prevent from seeking sometimes new agile opportunities, perhaps.
It's what we tend to do is harness the right technology that will drive the biggest value for our clients, and they themselves are not small clients. So getting that right is really important for them. And some of our clients are global clients as well. So I think you can have a really hyper innovative project and you can demonstrate super value from that, and it can look really good. But to me, it's one of those 1,000 flowers blooming, because if the company then runs out of cash and it only impacted 10 projects globally, did it really make a difference? Did it help energy transition accelerate? Did it help de-risk geopolitical tensions? Did it help with semiconductor modularization acceleration with the onshoring moves that are happening? You've got to be really clear about, okay, it's cool tech, but how is it a scalable proposition? So that may sound like more clunky and slower, but if you're really focused on impact, there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many dollars that anyone can zero in on, right?
That makes sense. We hear this pain point from a lot of people in similar position to you, whereby stability of a startup is one of their key concerns. Like, will they still be around in 5 years? Is there any way to, is there like a secret sauce to be able to find that out when you're like talking to these people? Say, promise me you'll be here in 5 years.
Yeah. Look, I've been involved in a startup, and I know how unpredictable it is. So even the best intentions can change, right? Things can get out of hand, or you can be really successful and exit sooner, or you can stay with it all the way through to IPO.
More likely to go out of hand, though.
You would know more than me because you interview so many, right? So I do think we've got, I won't go into it too much detail, but we've got a particular global safety proof of value and accuracy AI pilot underway. And we're blown away by the technology and the opportunity that we've seen in a particular region, and we want to scale that globally. The research and development capability that's part of my extended organization has evaluated that particular technology provider, and we're learning and adapting and proving the value quickly. But the transition from that particular small team of a few people to potentially a different technology that we think can be scalable may be part of that evolution. So it's a question of, could they be part of that, and have what they have done, is that useful to one of our other platform providers that nearly does what they do but not quite as well? And how do we bring that predictability from that supplier with the innovation that the smaller disruptive player is bringing? How do we combine that capability? So be fair to everyone, but not necessarily rely on a couple of people in a shed to serve our safety needs for 40,000 people. That doesn't feel like the right balance between innovation and agility with the outcomes that we're responsible for as a major employer of people all over the world.
How about innovation from within? Do you have like a group of programmers working on some tech stack, perhaps?
Entrepreneurship is the trendy word.
Yeah. So look, as a company, I would say we have a fantastic digital capability. It's around 1,000 people. And as a discrete digital services and solutions organization, we deliver high-end digital transformation capabilities and cyber capabilities for critical national infrastructure clients, many of them with acronyms and names that I'm not allowed to ever talk about. But there are some really complex, sophisticated solutions that we deliver for our customers. And we compete with organizations like Capgemini, Accenture and others, and win in those situations. And we're really focused on growing a world-class capability in our GTC digital capability, primarily in India.
With generative AI, surely this capability only becomes stronger that you guys have, because how easy is it now to code a software with tools that are available on the market? Like, you don't have to rely on a big team of software engineers. It can be done with one software engineer and an AI tool, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. The efficiency opportunity is huge. But look, I think the biggest opportunity that we had was just to avoid duplication and waste. Mm-hmm. So with the idea of citizen-centric developers, you've got low-code Python coders embedded in the 40-odd thousand people that we've got in our organization. So there was a lot of stuff that was coming through at the grassroots level that was duplicative. And so part of our operating model, really thinking about demand, where have we already solved that problem for a client before, and how do we reuse that solution rather than reinvent it multiple times? That was probably the biggest efficiency gain that we achieved, just by avoiding some of the duplication and waste that was happening. But then you get the enablement, so you get things like Copilot for GitHub, which can do some of the generative coding capabilities. So that's a focus for us as the next wave of transformation in India. We want to make sure that people are reusing the technologies that we've already created in the most efficient ways, and then using generative AI to accelerate that further.
Okay, so to the startups again, what advice would you give to people building solutions, tech solutions for our industry?
And for large companies, maybe.
Yeah, for large companies, look, I think get some thick soled shoes because you're going to burn a lot of shoe leather. Like trying to get around and sell to these large clients or even to the large architecture, engineering, construction companies. Trying to work with people like me in those companies rather than focusing on the project level will probably be my biggest advice, because I see a lot of people focused at some transactional level inside a region into a client. And I think that perhaps when they sell to that client and then to that project, they may think like, we've cracked it. We've now sold into Atkins Realis. And often they'll write to me and say, hey, we just met so-and-so in this region and we'd really like to now expand that capability. I think trying to get the alignment right at a global strategic level is probably the best use of their time. I think they need some revenues and some of the transactional stuff can happen faster, but there's not necessarily a direct correlation with I'm doing a discrete project with a client in this region with actually this is really important for us globally. So for example, I mentioned virtual site access, that's really important for us globally. So technologies around that, there are probably 20 to 30 technologies that we could call off that are part of that suite. And someone, somewhere in our organization is paying for some of those technologies. I can guarantee you that. Nearly all 30 will be deployed somewhere in a discrete level. But getting close to the 3 top technologies that we want to work with, and then we'll mandate that as part of our tech stack and then roll that out in a consistent way, being in that cohort and investing shoe leather in that cohort. Yes, you need to take a case study that says you deployed it here, but that might be in a region that we are less focused on, or with a client base that's not one of our top 60. So trying to get that correlation right would be important. And when I started out, one of my first clients was Motorola, and that was a huge client, and we really had a global rollout that we had no real experience of, and we managed to pull it off. So landing it really well right at the beginning and focusing your energies on that is probably worth more in the long term than lots of peripheral site references that maybe don't resonate with the focus areas for the digital program.
What other advice would you give to startups, but on the other side, what they should not be doing apart from what you already mentioned?
I don't know. I mean, the ones that I get to connect with are already doing the right things, because they're probably, I might meet them at the right event and we might make the right intros. They may have the right play. There's a period where the potential success of the opportunity can get CEOs a little overconfident about their proposition, and they may not really be clear on the value and the scale that this could deliver. And so, getting to from Series A to B is phenomenal, right? If you've had no money and suddenly you've got money, that can give you a new degree of confidence. But you could burn that money pretty quickly without really getting to transactional value and scalable, repeatable value. So just that I think that phase between pre-seed to Series B is really crucial. And I think from what I've seen, some people can lose their way at that point and not necessarily translate that to value for an investor or a scaler like us to really feel confident about it. I don't know if that answers your question.
That's a good answer.
No matter how good you do, how well you're doing, stay humble.
Stay humble and make sure, just like us, I have to account for every dollar. And it's really important not to get carried away with the concept and the disruptive capability. Sometimes the best technologies don't take off, and making sure that people are seeing value from it is really important.
Where do you see, Darren, the most opportunity or potential for technology within our space? Aside from, well, you can mention AI. We've kind of discussed it already, and it's the obvious answer these days. But
look, I think the opportunity for hyper personalization and hyper modularization of the retail construction experience, I think is a real high opportunity. We spoke, off camera about prefab. We spoke about the Elon Musk prefab houses where you push a button and they construct themselves. There's something about meeting the construction needs, the housing needs of the planet in a lower cost, more modular way, and enabling that to be done at the design level, so it can be hyper customized, so it can feel like a high value product, but it's designed in a modular way and can be executed with people and with automation and robots at the same time. For me, that's like a North Star that we should be working to. I think there's huge opportunity to build luxury product in a more orchestrated, modular way that allows the interoperability of people and machines to work more safely. And I think we're really at the beginning of that evolution, and that's what, I do many things with my job day to day, but that is something that I think is really powerful. And I mentioned the retail experience, but you could apply it to the urgency around semiconductor right shoring. So the need to make sure that semiconductors can be built within a sovereign nation and not rely on dependencies around Taiwan and other geopolitical challenges in that part of the world.
Very unique insight.
I'll shift gears a little bit here. So in one of the articles you mentioned that design process should be more clearly linked to execution. How can you make this happen?
Yeah, good question. So, what we've noticed is that relationship between the design packages and then how they get executed by a construction prime contractor and the subcontractors, that's where a lot of the friction and cost and delay can exist. So we've focused very much on, within our own desire to be world-class in the way that we design and construct, we've focused on innovation modules, but some that we've created because we haven't seen the right technology in the market yet. And also we've partnered quite closely with companies like Autodesk and Bentley to optimize that problem together with them to minimize risk. So for us, that's a really important area to get right. And we're seeing opportunity, and we've put a lot of investment in, tens of millions into that area. And we're starting to see the returns from that investment.
So is it the issue with passage of information or the way the information is presented from the design stage to the construction stage, or where
I think even so if I go back just to the design construction, so the design process, like really defining what the deliverables are and how those deliverables accelerate the construction process and being consistent across our regions, so we can have a similar construction optimized experience, is a really big step forward for us. So when I hear clients talk about some of our competitors, I think some of our competitors doing amazing things and they keep us on our toes. But one thing I take pride in is that we are a global company and we are able to execute consistently between our regions as much as possible. And so for us trying to get that professionalism in the way that we design, and we design for construction, and we package the work in a way that's easier to understand and consume at the construction level, and doing that not just in one region because we've got some talented heroes that have worked it out and no one else in our company is adopting it. We've been really purposeful about having that as an enterprise offer and then rolling that out.
Darren, you wrote or you spoke recently about how, or perhaps we discussed it when we spoke before, but how will AEC business models develop over the next 5 to 10 years, do you think?
I think energy transition and the importance of getting that right for each sovereign nation and making sure that they have the right energy security and they have the right AI data center capabilities and so on. I think that's going to be really important. I think the semiconductor strategies for companies are going to be really important. So that's one way of looking at that question.
Do you see more perhaps vertical integration within companies? Like I guess Atkins Realis perhaps is an example of this, whereby I think you mentioned earlier that they do design, build, and operate.
Yeah.
Is this like a growing trend that perhaps technology enables, particularly AI?
And maybe I'll add. So, are we looking into more consolidation of services? So, from design into construction and then delivery and to operation, or more? We're looking at more distributed kind of services.
Full life cycle type services.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, Martin, I think we're seeing huge growth potential in our engineering services business and in our nuclear business. But that said, we have a range of full life cycle offers right through to decommissioning. And in certain regions, certain markets, we're seeing huge growth there as well. And we're being really quite innovative in those areas. So, for example, if I look at metro contracts that are being released in North America, particularly in Canada, you're looking at things like the Canada Line in Vancouver. There's metro systems in Toronto, Montreal, Egerton, Edmonton. There's some really big metro concepts like railroad transit concepts there. We design, build, and operate the Vancouver line, the Canada Line for Vancouver, so the train system. It's an autonomous train system that goes in there. And we've found that to be a really successful project. And that's type of success we want to emulate. And we have significant projects underway in other metropolitan cities in the US, in the Canada region and other regions. And we're taking our learnings from innovation. So we have digital twin capabilities. There's autonomous train capabilities that we have learned a lot from how to provide a world-class punctual service to transit users. And we want to replicate that success in a profitable way for the owners in other cities.
Yeah, design, build, and operate. Nice. My last one will be, so you are on Autodesk Executive Advisory Board.
Yes, that's right, yes.
So what's your involvement there, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, look, so Autodesk are a major strategic supplier to us as a company. They're one of our largest construction tech spends in terms of the software that we consume from them. And as part of that, we've had a close relationship with them around their innovation roadmap and how we harness that innovation quickly and drive value for our customers. So that's really important. I'd say that my interest in Autodesk is that they have three big markets. They're focused on media and entertainment, and so really fantastic clients in that space. They've also got a manufacturing capability with clients like Ford. And then moving on to that, they have the architectural, engineering, and construction industry. Those are three major focus areas. But I would say that they've struggled in the past to assimilate all of the acquisitions that they've made and turn that into a cohesive offer for customers. And so the customer experience, the user experience hasn't been as streamlined as possible. On top of that, they're also involved with an active investor called Starboard Value, who want to drive more shareholder value from their returns. At the same time, there are some challenges from some of the customer base that Autodesk haven't been as innovative as possible, and in some cases they have a monopoly. So they're in an interesting position where they really need to pivot and lean really into this new transformative opportunity. And I think they're looking to do that in the most efficient and effective way. So they've asked myself and a small number of other leaders, technology leaders from some of the largest customers that they have globally in the media and entertainment, in the manufacturing and the AEC industry, to really start for us to work together to prioritize what we need to drive innovation in our industry so that they can start to change their roadmap and innovate in the most efficient and effective way. It's a little bit like what I've been talking to you about, how we got ourselves organized around our priorities. They've asked for myself and a handful of other executives to help streamline what would really make a difference for us as users of their technology, but also what would drive the most value in the way that we serve our clients.
As Chief Digital Officer then, so what are some of the key resources that you absorb or digest that help you keep up to speed with what's going on in the industry?
Well, obviously Bricks and Bytes would be my first port of call, right? And, after I've done that, I would say, firstly, to do my job, you have to be inquisitive and always kind of interested and learning about what's happening in the market. But I generally find my immediate network, so I build quite a strong network with my peers, but I also have built over the years a good relationship with some of the CEOs of the more successful disruptors. And so trying to stay connected to them and understand what they're trying to do, and in some cases where we can actually make them successful in our complex organization at scale. I think that's how I kind of stay in tune. There are things that they're doing and investments that are being made that are really potentially disruptive to what Atkins Realis and our competitors do, but not being afraid of that and trying to embrace that and think about how does that drive value for the customer and how can we be successful together, keeps me connected and keeps the conversations flowing. There's lots of other resources out there. I stay connected with broader industry. So I've come from outside this industry and I've brought other industries. So I've got a long pedigree in manufacturing and aerospace and defense. So bringing some of that thinking and some of the proof points from that into this industry has helped. And I maintain those professional networks with my peers from other industries as well. So learning about what's happening and the suppliers that they're having success with, thinking about the technologies and the investments that are being made. And also I have a share portfolio that I kind of invest in for my children. And so that keeps me kind of tuned into, do I need to be investing more in uranium mining, because of the AI boom, or small modular reactor investors? Where am I with quantum compute? Where's Tesla at the moment with a relationship with Elon and so on? So keeping an investment portfolio tuned into this type of area is quite useful as well. And obviously, I have to declare any interests that I have that conflict with my role, but you have to have a lot of shares before that becomes a significant problem.
Okay.
Maybe just one last quick. What surprised you the most coming from the outside into construction?
I think, what inspires me the most is, as I say, the mission is to engineer a better future for our planet and its people, right? It's really important that we all harness the best technologies and the best innovative mindsets to help with some of the challenges that society is facing. So the potential is really huge. I love Atkins Realis because we do think globally and we operate really collaboratively, so we can bring value across the globes. I say the challenge is that there's a proud heritage of engineering and designing and creating things, but sometimes adoption and speed to value is better than having the innovation curated from within, particularly at a digital level, given the sort of billions of dollars that are coming in from private equity and the hyperscalers like Microsoft and Google and others. So making sure we're not creating something that the universe has already prepared for us and we harness that to drive value quickly. That's probably one of the bigger adoption challenges that I've found. And then the other one is really, as an industry, we are predicting, I think it's around a 12 to 13 million person delta between the amount of engineers and construction people that are needed to power society as we continue to grow and urbanize, and the amount of people that are training through STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths capabilities to be qualified at the level that could sustain or even maintain what we currently do. So helping the industry understand that in partnership with technology, we can do more together rather than feeling fearful around one's own job preservation. That's probably the one of the bigger challenges. But I do see a shift because we're seeing a younger workforce join with slightly different mindsets. And that, with strong leadership that we have here at Atkins Realis, is helping that transition move faster.
Beautiful.
Darren, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, look, thank you for the tough questions. That was really fun. You
did
made
well.
me think.
Yeah.
Definitely earned my lunch today.
I think it's much easier sitting this side of the table, right?
Oh.